Have you ever found your last name in a place it shouldn't be? Tonight's horror story, The Collector's Church, follows one man's descent into a chilling rural cult where everyone and everything seems connected by blood. If you love first-person horror and rural cult stories, stay tuned and remember to like and subscribe if you survive. I didn't think much of the name when I saw it on the map. Greywater Hollow sounded like the kind of place that belonged to moonshine legends or the background noise of a ghost story. But to me, it was just a speck in Appalachia, another dot on the road trip I convinced myself was about family history. Truth is, I was running from grief.m. why Dad had passed 3 months earlier, and his death opened something in me. Not just pain. Something else. I need to know what came before him. All he left behind was a wooden trunk and a worn photograph, a church congregation, dated 1891. Everyone in the photo looked directly into the lens, unsmiling, stark, except for one boy near the front. He was the only one with his head turned slightly, looking just to the side. Looking, it seemed, at me.my last name. Hendricks was handwritten on the back. No first names, no location, just a line scratched in pencil beneath the image, where the root returns. That's what led me to Greywater Hollow, a place with a population smaller than my old high school, and the kind of silence that clings to your skin. I didn't expect anything, just old records, maybe a graveyard photo, a connection, however thin, to a past that never made sense. I got into town on a Friday. The highway narrowed into a tree-choked stretch of road that the GPS barely recognized. The sign welcoming me to Greywater Hollow was chipped and rusting, and below it, a smaller hand-painted plaque. Come find what was never lost. Charming, I thought. The main street was a blink and you'll miss it affair, a diner, a general store, a gas station with one pump. All the buildings had white wooden facades, the kind you see in postcards about simpler times. I parked next to the diner and went inside. It was empty, save for a woman behind the counter and a man in the corner booth. Both looked up when I entered. Afternoon, I said, forcing a polite nod. You're a Hendricks, the woman said. Before I'd even introduced myself, I blinked. Sorry, how do you? She just smiled, wide, warm, and a little too long. We remember family here. I should have left then. Should have turned around, gotten back in the car, and pretended the past was better left buried. But curiosity is a slow poison, and I'd already taken the first sip. I sat at the counter. She poured coffee without asking. It was strong, black, bitter, just like my dad used to make it. You here for the records? She asked. I nodded, trying to trace some ancestry. My great-great-grandfather lived around here, I think. Might have been a preacher. The man in the corner chuckled softly. I glanced over. He had a long gray beard and eyes that seemed too clear for someone his age. We've got lots of preachers buried here, he said. Some never left the pulpit. The woman handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a hand-drawn map. On it, roads, trails, and one building marked with a cross. The church still stands, she said. You should come by Sunday morning. The service is real special. I didn't answer immediately. Something about the way she said special made my stomach tighten. Like I was being led, not invited still. I took the map. Outside, the air had grown colder. The sun was dipping below the mountains, and the wind carried the sharp scent of pine and something else. Something older. I checked into a tiny bed and breakfast run by a sweet couple who spoke in slow, measured tones. Their last name? Hendricks. When I asked if we might be related, the man just grinned. Aren't we all? He said that night. I dreamed of singing, voices rising and falling in perfect harmony, but it wasn't music. It was words. Return to the root. Let the blood remember. Let the name be one. I woke up with a headache and a sense that something had been taken from me, but I couldn't say what. Sunday came. I didn't plan on going to the service. Not at first. But something kept tugging at me. A low hum in my chest, like a string being gently pulled. The church was exactly where the map said it would be, on a hill just outside town. It was immaculate. White painted wood with arched windows and a single bell tower that rose like a finger pointing to judgment. I expected dust, cobwebs, age. Instead, it looked preserved, perfect, as if time had skipped it. There were people gathered outside, dressed in old-fashioned Sunday clothes. They all turned as I approached. No one said a word. They simply nodded and stepped aside, allowing me through the front doors. The interior was candlelit, though it was mid-morning. Wooden pews lined the aisle. A wide pulpit stood at the front, and behind it, a massive stained glass window depicting a tree made of faces. The service began without introduction. One by one, voices rose, all in unison. Male, female, young, old. No hesitation. No stumbles. Just perfect synchronization. They sang not with melody, but with purpose. Their mouths moved exactly the same. Their eyes never blinked. I tried to follow along, but the words weren't in English. Or maybe they were, and my ears refused to understand them. Then the sermon began. A man stepped to the pulpit, his voice low and steady. "We are the branches," he said, "and the branch must always return to the root." There was a pause. Then every person in the pews replied in one voice, "The root remembers." The preacher turned his gaze toward me. "You've come far, haven't you?" I felt every eye in the room turn. A heat flushed my neck. I opened my mouth to respond, but found I couldn't. He smiled, not kindly. "You carry the name. You carry the echo. You carry the call." Behind me, a child's voice whispered, "You're almost ready." I left the church before the service was over. Or at least, I think I did. Time felt like it skipped, like I blinked, and I was outside again, halfway down the gravel path toward my car. The congregation didn't follow me out. They just watched, motionless through the church's open doors, as I stumbled back to my rental. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. The moment I turned the key, the radio came on. Static. No music, no voices. And then, just for a moment, a whisper underneath the fuzz. "Return." I turned it off. Back at the B&B, I tried to convince myself it was all theater. A town with a weird tradition, a little too into their own ancestry. I'd seen things like that before: Civil War reenactments, Amish living museums, even those medieval fair people who get way too into character. But this felt different. This felt rehearsed but not performed. Like they weren't acting at all. I needed answers. And if this place had any, they'd be in the town archives. The librarian was an older woman named Margaret. She looked like she belonged in a black and white photograph. Lace collar, hair pinned up, movements precise. She didn't even blink when I asked about the Hendricks family records. She walked me to the back of the archive room, a section labeled Founding Lineages. A locked glass case held old leather-bound ledgers. She opened it with a key from around her neck. "You'll want this one," she said, sliding out a cracked volume marked Reverend Elias Hendricks, 1887 to 1906. "Reverend?" I muttered. So he really was a preacher. She gave me a long look. "He still is." I waited for her to smile. She didn't. The journal was written in looping cursive, hard to read in places, but vivid. Elias had been a firebrand preacher who believed in divine bloodlines, and chosen names that carried the voice of God down through generations. He spoke of preserving the echo of Eden and keeping the song within the blood. But then, the entries changed. By 1891, he'd stopped preaching sermons and started writing about visions. He claimed that during a fast atop Mt. Greywater, the mountain spoke back. He described a presence made of voices that moved like wind in the leaves and had no shape until you gave it one. He called it the collector. Elias claimed it had shown him a great tree, one not of wood or bark, but of faces, all connected by blood and name. His mission, he wrote, was to return the name to itself by gathering every branch of his bloodline and binding them back to the root. He ended one entry with a line that chilled me. "We are not born. We are recalled." I closed the book. My breath was tight. The librarian hadn't moved. She stood at the end of the aisle, hands folded, watching me. "You see now," she said softly, "why we remember." I left in silence. That night, I tried to leave. I packed my bag, tossed it in the trunk, and sped down the only road that led back to the highway. 10 minutes later, I passed the diner. Another 10, the gas station. 30 minutes. The church again, at the hilltop. That I hadn't turned around, but the road had folded in on itself. That I was back where I started. At the B&B, I asked the old couple about the road. The husband laughed. "Roads here know where you belong," he said. The wife poured tea without asking. "The hollow keeps its name." They asked me to stay another night. Just one. Sunday nights were important, they said. "It's when the song is clearest," she added. "When we're closest." Closest to what? I didn't ask. That evening, I sat on the porch with a borrowed blanket and the journal in my lap. I kept rereading one entry over and over. "When the final voice returns, we'll be whole. The chorus will rise. The name will rise with it." I wondered if that's what I was, a final voice. A missing note in some long-forgotten hymn. It made no sense, but neither did the rest of this place. The wind whispered through the trees. I swear it carried words this time. Hendrix. I snapped the journal shut. The porch light flickered. I looked up and saw someone standing at the edge of the woods. A child. No. A mirror of one. He looked just like I had in childhood photos. Right down to the jacket I'd lost in second grade. He didn't move, just stood there, watching. Then slowly, deliberately, he turned his head and pointed toward the mountain. I didn't sleep that night. At 3:33 a.m., I heard footsteps above me. The old couple didn't have an upstairs. In the morning, I found something on the floor just inside my door. A photo. The same church photo from my father's trunk, but this one had been changed. Everyone in the photo was still facing forward, except now they were all turned slightly. Every single one. Looking at me. I didn't leave my room that day. I kept thinking about the photo, how the faces had all turned toward me, how they shouldn't have, how they couldn't have. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe the original had been edited. Maybe, just maybe, I was losing it. But no explanation held. Every time I blinked, I saw those eyes, hundreds of them, fixed on me. By sunset, the B&B was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums just beneath the ears, like a warning. The air had a pressure to it, like just before a storm. The lights dimmed unnaturally early, and the old couple never appeared for dinner. Their door was open, but the room inside was empty. Perfectly made beds, no signs of packing, not even a note. Just a fresh set of clothes laid out for me on the dresser, old-fashioned Sunday wear, folded perfectly. My size. I didn't put them on, but I took them. Something told me I'd need them later. I stuffed the clothes into my bag. grabbed the journal, and left. Outside, the town was deserted, not empty, deserted. Curtains were drawn, doors locked. Even the diner, always lit, was dark. But in the hills, just beyond the trees, I could see a faint glow. Lanterns, maybe. Torches. A slow procession moving toward the mountain. I followed the light. At first, I tried to keep my distance. But as I got closer, I realized I wasn't sneaking through shadows. I was being guided. No one turned to look at me. But each time the trail split, someone was waiting, standing, silent, not pointing, just existing where the path led. All of them had the same last name. The forest gave way to a wide clearing at the base of empty gray water. The congregation stood in a circle, surrounding a vast hollow tree, blackened with age, hollowed at the base like a cave mouth. Candles burned in front of them, flickering in the windless air. The preacher from before stood at the tree's edge, eye in his hand, a silver bowl. Inside it, water that never rippled. He dipped his fingers into the bowl and touched his forehead, then turned to face the group. "We gather not to worship," he said, voice low and full. "We gather to remember." The crowd replied, "The root remembers." That's when they began to sing. It wasn't music. Not really. It was breath and voice and language without language, like wine through dead leaves, like a lullaby for something old. The tree groaned, not creaked, groaned. A sound deep and organic, like something breathing through a dot. I tried to back away, but someone caught my arm. I turned. It was my father. I staggered back, gasping. He looked just as I remembered him before the hospital, tall, tired eyes, calloused hands. But his face was wrong. Too smooth, too still, like a wax figure with a memory behind the eyes. He spoke, but his lips didn't move. "Don't run." I tried to scream. I couldn't. My mouth opened, but the sound refused to leave. My father reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded note. He pressed it into my palm and stepped back into the crowd, vanishing between two figures who looked exactly like my grandfather and great-grandmother. I opened the note. "You are the final name. The echo ends with you, or begins again." I don't know why I didn't flee. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was something else, something deeper in me. A thread finally tugged, because instead of running, I stepped toward the tree. The congregation parted without touch or sound, clearing a path to the hollow trunk. The preacher nodded once. I stepped inside. The air changed instantly. Cool, wet, heavy with rot and old breath. The inside of the tree wasn't wood, it was flesh. Or something like it. The walls pulsed faintly. Vein-like roots ran along the floor, weaving through old bones and fragments of clothing. At the center of the chamber sat a mirror. Old, cracked, but reflective. I approached it slowly. What I saw wasn't me. It looked like me, moved like me. But the eyes, they were filled with strangers. And behind my reflection stood everyone, the congregation, my father, the preacher, the child from the forest, all standing behind my image, though I was alone in the room. Then they all spoke, through the mirror, together. One voice, return to the name. Be gathered, be held, be kept. I looked down. The roots were creeping up my legs. I didn't fight. Not at first, but then. I remembered the journal. I reached into my coat, pulled it out, and opened to the last written page. There was something new there, words that hadn't been written before. Break the mirror, break the blood. I didn't think. I just acted. I grabbed a jagged bone from the floor, femur, maybe, and drove it into the glass. The mirror shattered. The sound was like a scream being born. The tree pulsed, once, violently, and the roots let go. Light bled from the cracks in the wood. The congregation outside wailed in unison, not in pain, in despair. I ran. I ran until my lungs tore at my ribs. I don't remember the path I took down the mountain, only that I didn't stop. Branches tore at my clothes. Stones cut my palms. But I didn't feel any of it. The moment I reached the base, I saw my rental car, exactly where I'd left it, still covered in leaves. Engine cold. Keys were in my pocket. I didn't think. I drove. This time, the road didn't loop. It stretched forward, black and silent, like it had been waiting for me to come back to my senses. As if the mountain had released me. Or maybe finished with me. I didn't stop until I hit a major highway, then another, then another. I kept driving. Hours passed, then a day, then two. I checked into a nameless motel outside St. Louis. Cheap lights, orange curtains, carpet that smelled like mildew, and burnt coffee. I slept for almost 12 hours straight. No dreams, no voices, just absence. It felt like healing for a while. I flew back home a week later, threw the journal into a lockbox, packed away the photo, didn't even open the suitcase I brought back from the hollow. I told myself it was over, that I'd escaped, that I was me again, and for a time, I believed it until I started noticing them. It began subtly. Background figures, someone standing just a little too still at a bus stop, a woman at the grocery store holding a can of soup for 3 straight minutes, a man in a suit staring at the ceiling in the library's reference section. At first, I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe I was jumpy after everything that happened, looking for patterns where there were none. But then I started seeing their faces, familiar faces. My face. Different versions of it. Age shifted, gender flipped, skewed by time and distance, but all unmistakably from the same root. My root, same bone structure, same eyes, same last name on their name tags, on their mail, on old ID cards they never fully put away. Hendrix. I moved. Twice. Different city. Different coast. It didn't help. The more I tried to shake the pattern, the clearer it became. The name had spread, and it was watching itself. I tried burning the journal. It wouldn't catch. Tried drowning it. Pages didn't soak. I buried it under cement. Months later, it was back in my mailbox, wrapped in brown paper. No return address, the same cracked spine, and a new entry. The echo cannot be silenced. It simply moves. We are not born. We are recalled. I stopped sleeping, started checking the mirror a dozen times a day, started talking to strangers in crowds, trying to catch them off guard. One time, I grabbed a man by the shoulder and spun him around, demanding to know his name. He looked terrified. Said his name was Alan Hendrix. Said his family had lived in the area for generations. Said he'd never seen me before in his life. I stared into his eyes for a long time. He had the same scar above his eyebrow as I did. Same cleft in the chin. His daughter, waiting nearby, had my mother's smile. I didn't say anything else, just walked away. I've tried therapy, meditation, research. Nothing helps. The farther I get from the hollow, the more I realize it doesn't matter. Because the church was never a place. It was a pattern. A network of names. A ritual rooted in lineage, not location. And I was never chosen. I was recalled. The final voice in a song that's been echoing for centuries. And now, that song is spreading again. The final straw came last week. A knock at my door. Early morning. I opened it, and there stood a child, maybe 9 or 10, pale blue eyes, Same ones I see in the mirror. He handed me a folded card. No words. No sound. Just the card. He turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. I opened the card. Inside, handwritten. Service begins at sundown. We remember. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd let them finish their ceremony. If I'd stood in the tree, faced the mirror, and said yes. Would I be at peace? Whole? Or would I be gone? Would I have become the preacher? The father? The boy in the woods? I don't know. But what I do know is this. I see more of them every day. On trains. In alleys. Reflected in windows where no one stands. Not chasing me. Just watching. Waiting. And one night soon, I think they'll stop watching and start singing. If you enjoyed this unsettling dive into psychological horror and supernatural mystery, don't forget to comment your favorite moment or the scariest line. Want more stories like the Collector's Church? Hit that bell so you'll never miss another twisted tale.